Hi, everybody. Mitch Tanenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today. This is the security news update for October 23rd, 2022. Starting off with some security news, the folks at Intel have admitted that the BIOS code, the UFI and BIOS code for the Alder Lake family of chips, which is their 12th generation current chips, has been stolen and it is available online. Of course, they are attempting to make light of this and say, oh, we're not worried about it, but I am speculating they're scared to death. Having the source code allows a hacker to try to figure out how you might compromise the chip. Of course, Intel says there are no bugs in our firmware, which is why they patch their firmware all the time. It's to repair those no bugs that aren't in there. Um, and likely this is probably China. Um, so we shall see. The private key for the firmware was also stolen. Hopefully they can revoke that automatically. Don't know, but I'm sure there's a lot of damage control going on. So look for updates from our friends at Intel if you're running current Intel chips in your computers. It could possibly come by way of Microsoft, but it could also come by way of your computer's manufacturer, whoever that is. Um, in the standards section, CISA has released something they're calling SCUBA. It's a little bit of a stretch for the acronym, but everybody's got to have acronyms. It stands for Secure Cloud Business Application Project. It's still in its early days, but it's definitely worth watching. In the printed newsletter, I have some links. They have a set of Microsoft 365 security baselines for Defender, for Azure Active Directory, for Exchange, for OneDrive, for Power BI, for Power Platform, SharePoint, Teams, and they say that a set of standards for Google is on the way. Not yet fully baked, I'd say, but definitely worth watching, and still even in its early stages might well be worthwhile checking out. Next, in terms of new security features, Microsoft has added a new feature to Windows 11 designed to slow down hackers, which is always a good thing. Historically, hackers have tried whacking away at Windows passwords as fast as they can, which can be tens of thousands of passwords per minute. What they've done is they implemented a feature which really shouldn't have any impact on legitimate users. That every time you enter a failed password and trying to log into server message block logins, you have to wait 2 seconds. So now, instead of being able to do, say, 30,000 passwords a minute, they can do 30 passwords a minute, and that's just going to make that not very effective. This option is on by default. If for some reason you need to turn it off, you're going to have to do that. But it is on by default, and it is out now if you're running Windows 11. In the security issues, social media, we all know affects your privacy. Here's kind of a new way that we really weren't looking at before. Apparently, TikTok planned to track individual U.S. citizens' movements using their location data from the TikTok app. That's probably a permission that you give to TikTok, probably by default, and probably one that you can take away. But they kind of got caught at it, so this may slow them down, but it probably won't deter them. And this is no different than what Facebook or Google is doing, but they're not owned by foreign governments. At least we don't think so. So from that perspective, this is probably a little bit more nefarious. And clearly, our buddies at TikTok have motivations which are less than, shall we say, honorable intentions to deal with your location data. So probably something to watch out for, and probably in general something to watch out for social media apps in general. On the legal front, a U.S. Army major and his wife, who is a doctor at Johns Hopkins, he was at Fort Bragg, have been arrested for trying to sell secrets to the Russians. He claimed that the reason he was doing that, or they were doing that, was out of devotion to Russia. This is not a great situation. Don't know the details yet. I'm sure we'll find out. The information was relatively low level, so that's probably good. But he faces up to 10 years if he's convicted, and I'm guessing he's likely to be convicted. On the education front, a really great article from Bloomberg on how hackers target eager home buyers with basically fake emails that tell them to send money to the wrong place. A lot of people have lost 5 figures and many 6 figures, several of which were described in the article. If you're in the mortgage business, very important reading. But I think you got to look at do you educate your employees? Do you educate your customers? How do you do that? This is a great article in terms of increasing their education level. In the breach section, we have the retailer Shine was fined $1.9 million, again, not for being breached, but for covering the fact up. And their breach affected 39 million customers. The Attorney General said that this is in New York, says that the fine reflects inadequate cybersecurity policies, practices, and procedures. We're starting to see more administrative fines in the multi-million-dollar range from coast to coast. So this is kind of a business risk. You pay me now or pay the Attorney General later, and you'll wind up paying the Attorney General a lot more. Microsoft admits also in the breach section that it leaked 2 gigabytes of business-to-business data. Apparently, even Microsoft can't configure its own servers, right? The leak called Blue Bleed included 548,000 user files, 133,000 project files, and 65 entities, and included attachments like statements of work, product orders, and stuff like that. So, even Microsoft can't do it. It's hard. There's no question about it. And then finally, not finally, but next in the breach section, Australia's Medibank went from being a hero to not so much being a hero in less than a week. The Medibank is Australia's largest private health insurance company. They said last week that they repelled the cyber attack. Well, it turns out that apparently they didn't quite repel it. And 200 gigabytes worth of customer data is now in the hands of hackers. And the Australian Federal Police are investigating, but that's not going to change much of anything other than how much of a fine Medibank pays. But you have to be careful about what you say. If you don't really know whether anything's been compromised, well, first of all, how come you don't know? It's probably because you're not auditing and logging the right stuff. But if you don't know, don't say things. I think they were too quick to go off and say, "Oh yeah, not a problem. Everything's great. Nothing to see here. Just keep moving." And that came back to bite them in the tush. And so I think next time they'll be less quick to go off and say everything is fine. It's a challenge, right? Because from a PR standpoint, you want to try to say something quickly, but you don't want to say the wrong thing because that will definitely, from a PR standpoint, not work. And then lastly, in the breach section, wholesale giant Metro was hit by a cyber attack. Metro is probably more known in Europe than it is here. They operate in 30 countries. They have 100,000 employees, and they call it a IT incident, which is basically ransomware, and they're seeing infrastructure outages and store payment issues, warehouse issues, shipping issues, online ordering issues. But of course, the spin doctors say everything is fine, not to worry, which I think again will come back and bite them in the ass. But everybody tries to make light of these things, figuring that people will forget quickly. Don't know if that's true, but maybe it is. So in any case, they're being challenged there. And then in the last section, CISA has issued a binding operational directive Binding only means binding on federal government agencies. Some very strict guidelines, good guidelines for tracking your assets and vulnerabilities. They want them to be tracking their assets, in other words, knowing what's on your network every 7 days and running vulnerability scans every 14 days. That is probably more frequent than most people are doing, but if you build automated tools, and it should be done in real time. We do have some very cost-effective tools in that world, if that's something that you don't have a mechanism for today. And this is one that came back and bit them, boy, not a great thing. A hospital was using Google Analytics like everybody else, no surprise there, to go off and track what people were doing. Unfortunately, Google Analytics returns a whole lot of personal information back to Google, and so now the hospital is dealing with a 3 million person breach because of what Google does. So if you're using those tracking pixels, I don't care who it is, Google is no better or worse than anybody else. Make sure you understand what's actually going out the door. Again, if you need help with that, let us know. And as the privacy laws increase, it's going to only get worse. And speaking of privacy laws, Illinois has a very well-known biometric privacy law called BIPA. But apparently there's some other states that have privacy laws, Washington and Texas, to name two. And next year, with the implementation of a couple of the second generation privacy laws, there's going to be more states. The Texas Attorney General, who is up for re-election, can't miss that, is suing Google and Facebook for violating the Texas biometric information law. So, I think in those cases, Google and Facebook probably were plainly aware that they were breaking the law. They just didn't care. They figured they'd pay the fine. That may still work out for them depending on what the fine is. But, if the court issues an injunction, which they certainly could do, and I'm sure Google and Facebook will attempt to appeal that into oblivion, it could get pretty expensive and could impact their business operations. And last, this week's security news bites. Apparently, very few, like 25% of the election offices in the country, out of the 4,000 or so election entities, are using .gov domains. Why is that? And I've always wondered about that, why government entities don't do that. Well, apparently there used to be, but not anymore, a $400 a year fee, and governments figure, oh, what the hell, we don't want to spend $400. I mean, that's, the cost of their, I don't know, one coffee service or something. So we're going to save $400. We're going to get a .com domain. And of course, anybody can get a .com domain. Anybody can get a spoof similar domain. And so a couple of years ago, the feds decided that they were going to go pick up the cost of any government entity who wants a .gov domain. So we're very, very slowly seeing some entities moving to it. But in the meantime, all these entities, these election entities that are not using .gov domains, they're open for being spoofed. Speaking of spoofing, LinkedIn was really a hotbed, kind of like Twitter and Facebook, of these fake profiles. The thing that's different is in LinkedIn, these profiles were designed to masquerade as people who worked at companies like Amazon or whatever, and small companies too, not just big companies. Apparently, LinkedIn has been embarrassed enough, and their revenue structure is different, that they don't need fake user IDs to keep their stock price up. So they apparently took down literally like 1 million in one day of these fake accounts. So that's kind of good, but watch out, that this is not over by any stretch. The bad guys are definitely going to come back and try to resurrect their losses. The chip makers are telling the auto industry, for a long time, the auto industry has lived off of what's called just-in-time inventory management, where they make everybody else jump through hoops so they don't have to maintain inventory. The chip makers at this point apparently have told the car makers go to hell. And if you want what you're claiming you want, then you better get ready to pony up some dough, because at this point we really don't care. And if you don't want to pony up some dough, that's fine. We'll just put you at the back of the list with everybody else. This could have some impact. I know Tesla has its own chip making capability. It's probably a contract, probably not they're doing it themselves, but they're in control of it. Ford is doing some chip design now, but that's going to be a challenge for the automakers, and it's going to take some time to kind of right that chip and get it where it needs to be. So I don't think the chip shortage in the auto world is ending anytime soon. Gen Z and millennials say that they are more concerned about their own computer security than your computer security. What that means is you need to go implement things which are transparent to them, because you just can't count on them to go off and protect your stuff, because apparently they care more about themselves than you. Gee, that's a big surprise. And lastly, a customs vendor on the northern border that's used by both Canada and the United States claimed that they had a breach. There were 11,000 license plates. They read license plates on both sides of the border. 11,000 license plates were compromised. Well, it turns out it was a little bit more than that. It was actually close to 1.5 million that was compromised. So I'm sure there's going to be some fallout from that. But in the meantime, they just told a tiny little fib and see whether come back and haunt them. So with that, thanks for listening. If we can help you with any of these items, we'd love to do that. And until next time, stay safe.
Turnkey Cybersecurity and Privacy Solutions offers the complete cybersecurity program for small to medium-sized businesses. They include everything needed to secure your business and meet compliance requirements. Visit our website at turnkeycybersecurityandprivacysolutions.com to learn more.